Long-tailed macaques are known as the golden monkey by lab experimenters, but they're going extinct because more wild-caught monkeys are being sent to labs in the U.S. It's forced the official international monitoring group to halt the Cambodian monkey trade. The real silver lining? That's next on the PETA Podcast with Emil Guillermo. Welcome to the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo, your host for this inside look at animal rights. Brought to you by PETA, the largest animal rights organization in the world. On today's episode, CITES is not a household name, that's CITES, CITES, but it is the worldwide organization that's calling for a halt in the trade of Cambodian monkeys to the U.S. PETA helped prove that the number of monkeys to the U.S. had to be augmented by wild-caught monkeys, a violation in the eyes of CITES, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. Here's Dr. Lisa Jones Engel, PETA's primate expert, to spell it out for us in this conversation on the PETA Podcast.
CITES is the Convention on the International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. That's what CITES, C-I-T-E-S, stands for. When they halt trade, they're saying something is going on that is putting in real danger endangered species of plants and animals. So when they move on something, and they don't move that often, it's a big deal to put a suspension on primate trade.
So long-tailed macaques from Cambodia. Tell me about the trade. What will it impact, and how will it impact laboratory experimentation here in the U.S.?
So you and I first started talking about trade from Cambodia probably in 2020 at the start of the pandemic, when China, which had been the biggest mover of monkeys, long-tailed macaques around the world, shut its door. Cambodia threw open her doors. And at that point, tens of thousands of long-tailed macaques started flowing out of the country. What we did not know at that time, when we first started talking back in 2020, was that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife had an undercover investigation in Cambodia that started in 2017. U.S. Fish and Wildlife is the U.S.'s CITES management authority. They're the ones who are supposed to keep track of trade. And the U.S. officials knew something was really rotten in Cambodia. They had this undercover investigation. We found out last year that 30,000 wild-caught, long-tailed macaques from Cambodia entered into the U.S. during this investigation period. That's not how trade works. You don't get to. Wild long-tailed macaques are not allowed to be traded from Cambodia.
And so what's the impact of this halting of the trade to labs here? Well, how far-reaching is this action by CITES?
So when CITES announced last week that they were suggesting to their members to suspend trade with Cambodia, with the long-tailed macaques, you know who this is going to hurt really badly? And I say this with absolute pleasure. Charles River Laboratories. Because what Charles River's Laboratories did back in late 2022, early 2023, was they shifted and moved all of their importation of Cambodian origin long-tailed macaques up to Canada because they couldn't get them into the U.S. anymore. And the Canadian authorities were like, hey, that's fine. No problem. Well, it's going to be a very big problem for Charles River now.
Are they going to have enough monkeys, or will it mean the stopping of experimentation because of a lack of monkeys?
How this is all going to play out, the long-term fallout on this, we can only speculate at the moment. We could look to history for a little bit of it. Often what's happened in this trade in the preceding decades is that when one source is shut down, is cut off, another source opens up. So again, China closed their doors, Cambodia opened their doors. CITES is going to close Cambodia's doors. I imagine the Vietnam or the Philippines will open their doors as well. But here's what we have going for us. One, scientists around the world have they're voting with their dollars and with their feet. They're not asking for as many monkeys for their experimentation. Two, we have research that is being modernized. We've got scientists focusing on non-animal methods. And three, you have CITES that just dropped the hammer on this industry. And the industry is going to be afraid, and the clients who buy the monkeys are going to be afraid. And more importantly, everyone is now looking at every single country that's exporting long-tailed macaques.
So CITES is more than just an acronym. It has some authority that people pay attention to and listen to. Is it possible that someone can thumb their nose at CITES and say, you don't have the authority to do this? Or is CITES that powerful that people will have to go with their decision to halt trade?
Once a country becomes a CITES signatory, once they signed that treaty, and the U.S. did it in 1973, Canada did it in 74, that country then is legally obligated to implement both domestic laws that align with CITES agreement and to regulate the trade of any listed species within their borders. If you're a CITES signatory, which we are, which Canada is, which another 183 countries are, when CITES says, don't trade in long-tailed macaques from Cambodia, you pay attention. You oblige, you comply, or you could put yourself in direct conflict with your treaty agreement.
All right. Now, I only mention this because it's newsy that America is pulling out of the WHO. They're pulling out of the climate accords in Paris. Could it be a thing where a company hit by this could say, hey, we want to appeal, and can you go to CITES, Mr. President, and do something about this? Is that a possibility? Is that something he would do?
I don't think so, because this is about trade. This is about money. This is about moving goods in the form of animals and plants around the world as a source, as a resource. But I guess you can never say never.
Yeah.
In the political climate where we exist. But, the CITES treaty it's kind of like a no-brainer. It's kind of like a duh. You have to regulate trade. Otherwise, you run out of things. The reason that CITES has kind of stepped in and about Cambodia is because there are no more monkeys left in Cambodia, essentially. CITES does not try to stop trade. CITES is pro-trade, pro-economics. CITES is the regulatory body that makes sure that it's sustainable and that it's legal. And Cambodia was not checking off those boxes.
Once again, PETA's role in this. What did PETA uncover, and what did it share with the Secretariat that might have led to a decision?
One of the things that when a country kind of gets sideways with CITES, the CITES Standing Committee or the CITES Animal Committee can ask a country to submit documentation about their trade. Cambodia had been sideways with CITES for a while. They'd been under investigation for a long time. Vietnam is under investigation. Philippines is under investigation. But as we understand it, what happened here was that U.S. Fish and Wildlife agents went to the CITES Secretariat in early November and presented them the evidence, the documents that were available as part of that undercover investigation in Cambodia for those 5 years. I think they even gave them videos, is what we're hearing. The other bit of information that PETA, had access to were some of the documents that the Cambodians themselves gave to the Secretariat that talked about how many monkeys they were able to produce, how many young monkeys they had, how many breeding females they had, how many males they had. And we looked at these numbers from these various farms and we crunched the data. And it was biologically impossible for those monkey farms in Cambodia to have been generating that many monkeys for export if they had not been supplementing their captive bred monkeys with wild caught. So we showed CITES the numbers. So we put together the data, we presented it to them. They apparently looked. And we also went to them about the mess that was going on in Canada, because we asked CITES, don't you think you should be looking and asking why Charles River thinks that it can bring in Cambodian origin monkeys into Canada, into North America, when the US authorities had essentially said, not here.
Yeah.
And CITES came back and said, good point, Lisa. I think we'll look into that.
And all this is to just make sure that they're regulating the flow of monkeys so that the monkeys don't go extinct, right?
Again, so just to emphasize that, CITES is there to combat illegal wildlife trade. CITES is pro-trade, but they don't want to see illegal wildlife trade because they know that can lead to losing plant and animal species. And the data, again, are very clear with the long-tailed macaque. Cambodia has decimated their population of long-tailed macaques. Laos has decimated theirs. Myanmar's are gone. The numbers have dropped in Thailand. The numbers have dropped around the world. And what CITES is doing is also paying attention to what the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, did, which was to say, we look at the data that the scientists, the primate scientists are submitting, and yes, we agree that these animals are endangered because their population levels are crashing. So now you have two international bodies, CITES and the IUCN, saying, whoa, if we don't act, if we don't step in and show people what's going on, we're going to lose an entire species of primate.
So we're really trying to, the purpose of all this is really to try to save the monkeys.
Exactly. This is all about saving this keystone species, this most extraordinary monkey who has been in these environments long before humans ever showed up and was doing okay for a long time until they couldn't anymore. And the thing about the experimentation industry, they can choose to stop. They can choose to say, all right, we're done with monkeys that give us bad science, that bring in infectious diseases, that cost too much, that have ethical concerns. We can focus on other scientifically human relevant methods. The industry could choose to stop this. And what the CITES has just done is CITES has spoken very loudly to them.
But it also forces Charles River's hand so that if they were reluctant to go, non-animal, they're being pushed to go non-animal. And it's not just because of PETA, it's because the very resource that that they're dependent on might be threatened by their misuse of the monkey, I guess, right?
Exactly. I mean, Charles River is getting, how many more messages does Charles River need to see from the world? Their resource, their lab tool is dwindling. Their clients are saying, I don't want to use these monkeys. They're still under investigation by the Department of Justice here in the US. They've had the CITES say, you're not going to get any more monkeys from Cambodia. I mean, the universe is sending a big flashing sign to Charles River. Get out of the monkey business.
And it's not like Charles River doesn't have alternatives. I mean, I'm sure they're a forward-thinking business, maybe, although they still test on monkeys or want to. They have to be thinking about non-animal ways to get to the same answers that they got with the monkeys, or better answers, right? Better science, right?
You're right. And they are thinking like that. Last year, they reported that they have committed $500 million to non-animal methods. Charles River is it's a company. It's a corporation. Its goal is the bottom line, to make as much money as they can. And it's becoming very clear to them that riding that monkey is not the way towards lots of money. They're going to be in real trouble, Emil, when this is signed. That first week of February, when the society committee meets, it doesn't just mean that live monkeys cannot leave Cambodia. It means that all trade of Cambodian origin long-tail macaques should be suspended. So all those monkeys that Charles River has from up in Canada, where they told their clients a couple of years ago, don't worry, the monkey doesn't have to be in your country. We can go someplace else. It's friendlier. We can do the experiments up there and then take the bits and pieces out of the monkey and send you those bits and pieces. No, this suspension of trade by the CITES means that they will not legally be allowed to be given a re-export permit. So their clients are going to be pissed off, I think.
Yeah. So Charles River, they have alternatives. They can get better science. They can make more money. Why do they hang on so hard to this idea that the monkeys, we need these monkeys, or the monkeys are the answer? It's a part of their why is it part of their game plan still, where when there's so many, as we pointed out, so many these signals to suggest it's time to get off the monkeys?
I think a large part of it was that this had been the successful way in which they had brought a huge income stream into their company. You get a monkey from Cambodia, it's going to cost you $200, and you're selling that monkey to your client for $15,000 or $20,000, or at the height of the pandemic, $50,000. I mean, it's like the golden monkey at that stage. But that was then, and this is now. And I think we are. I mean, have you looked at Charles River's stock prices recently?
I haven't, but I imagine
they are plummeting.
Just the scenario you pointed out. They buy the monkey from Cambodia for nothing, next to nothing, $15 or so. But on the market for they sell to scientists, they sell to labs, they sell to other experimenters, right?
Correct. And they sell it at a huge markup.
Yeah. It's when you said $15 to tens, 15,000 or more. I mean, that's a ridiculous markup. Is it still that way?
It used to be that, back in the 90s, the early 2000s, long-tail macaques were plentiful then. And they were just, the declared value for a shipment of long-tail macaques was, $50, $100 a tail on that. And then they were being sold to the clients here in the US for, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. When that pandemic hit, the numbers on both ends escalated dramatically. So now Charles River might declare that, a monkey that it's bringing out of Cambodia is worth $12,000, but they're still selling it to their clients for 2, 3, 4 times that amount, that markup. I mean, it is like, it's the mega monkey markup.
Wow. Still. I mean, it's hard to believe. We know that the science doesn't necessarily transfer between monkeys and humans, but why is the monkey so valued? Is it just because that's the way some scientists or some labs have always done their testing? Or why is the monkey still seen by some as the animal they must have?
Because that's the way they've always done it. That's the way that they were trained. That's the way their mentor was trained. That's the way that this other pharmaceutical company, when they tested their drug, they used monkeys. And so there was this idea that it had to be, that nothing could change. Change is scary in science. You always want to, you try to want to reduce the amount of variability. Again, we've had regulatory bodies like the FDA come out and say, you know what, we're ready for change. Yeah. We're ready for you to test the safety and efficacy of your drug using non-animal methods and submit those data to us. And
now that CITES, the Secretariat, has halted trade, What happens next? There's a standing committee now. I understand. What is the next step?
So between February 3 and February 8, 2025, in Geneva, the CITES Standing Committee will be meeting. And they're talking about, again, CITES regulates all trade in animals and plants. The long-tailed macaque is getting a lot of focus right now, but the Standing Committee has got 5 days where it's talking about many, many things. And they're going to discuss this. And I have no doubt that Cambodia is going to be jumping up and down saying, no, don't stop us from trading. We like trading monkeys. We like selling monkeys. And I have no doubt that the pharmaceutical industry is going to be jumping up and down saying, if you shut off the source of Cambodian monkeys, we're all going to die. And I have no doubt that Charles River is talking to people in the back rooms and in the bathrooms and in the hallways and whatnot. But, frankly, the data are there. Everyone has seen it. The Secretariat has seen it. The Standing Committee has seen it. You can't deny that illegal trade was the norm coming out of Cambodia.
All right. So now this is when you talk about Charles River talking and essentially lobbying people, would they be lobbying politicians? And this is where the earlier question I said, we got Trump pulling out of WHO and out of the Paris Accords. Is this a thing where Charles Rivers says, hey, you got to protect our company. Our companies could go under because of this CITES thing. Would it be?
Charles River used to think that they could get away with that. Yeah. I think Charles River used to think that they could just walk into the room, stride in the room, and people would listen to them. But again, Charles River is under investigation.
Yeah, they're under investigation, as you said. But they're where do they stand? This is the big player. Charles River is it, right?
Goliath was big too, and he just put a rock between his eyes, and he went down. And there are so many rocks and sticks being thrown at Charles River, and they're landing. So maybe 5 years ago, I would think, all right, maybe Charles River is going to be able to pull this one off and make the influence. But, Charles River, it's not the company that it was. Look at the stock prices. Again, they just lost a big pharmaceutical client they reported last week. Their clients aren't using as many monkeys. Charles River doesn't have the power that it used to because Charles River has not changed rapidly enough. Charles River didn't keep up. They kept banking on the idea that people were going to keep using monkeys. And scientists are not agreeing to that.
So CITES could be heralding a major change in terms of the use of animals in experimentation, meaning closer to a curtailment of the use of animals.
This is a big step towards there. You close that door on Cambodia, you catch Charles River's fingers in that door. The rest of the industry is paying attention. Everyone's looking at what's going to happen with this. Yeah, I think CITES they have sent a message. I don't know that they knew that they were, I don't know if they understood what the ripple effect was going to be. I hope that the reason CITES decided to do this was for the monkeys, because that's their job, to protect the trade in endangered species. And we all know that the long-tailed macaques are endangered.
Dr. Lisa Jones Engel, PETA's primate scientist, specialist, thank you very much for being part of the PETA podcast.
Always a pleasure to talk with you, Emil.
Dr. Lisa Jones Engel. See other interviews we've done with Lisa on this podcast for her work as PETA's monkey scientist expert. It's a big deal if this CITES decision goes through. And that's our show for today. Hey, thank you for listening. Season 8, we're into Season 8. And if you're listening to this as we run it the first time, it's cold out there. Bring your animals indoors. Please. There are reports of deaths all around the country where these record-breaking temperatures are a threat, a danger to your animal companions. Anyway, don't forget to send a link of the show to your friends. Tell them you like the PETA podcast. You can contact us at PETA.org. You can find me on X, that's Twitter, at emilamok, that's EMILAMOK, or see my vlog at amok.com, or see my work at patreon.com/emilamok, that's EMILAMOK, or at Substack. Are you Substack fans? Substack.com /@emilamok. And of course, you can see this podcast on YouTube at emilamok1. Once again, thank you for listening. Check out all our episodes on your favorite podcast app or on Apple Podcasts, where you can subscribe to as well as rate and review the show. It helps get the word out about the issues you care about. Our music is provided by CarbonWorks. Check them out on YouTube. And join us again next time for more insight into animal rights and the fight for a cruelty-free world on the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo.